Welcome to a short video about the secret war in Laos. Laos is a small Southeast Asian country about the size of Great Britain. It's bordered by Myanmar, China, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Laos is predominantly mountainous with narrow valleys, and the land surface is dotted by dense jungle foliage. The country is not rich in natural resources, and its land is not conducive to farming. In fact, for decades, opium was the only real export. The people of Laos are peace-loving and live life in a relaxed state of mind. Live and let live would be the best way to describe it. For years, Laos was a monarchy, and the people loved their king and the royal family. The Lao people are not warlike, but over the centuries they have fought to protect their country, and such was the case in the late 1950s when North Vietnam invaded northeastern Laos, and thus begun a civil war called the Secret War in Laos. The leaders of the free world became alarmed, and
I feel impelled to speak today in a language that, in a sense, is new. One which I, who have spent so much of my life in the military profession, would have preferred never to use. That new language is the language of atomic warfare.
A year or so later, President Kennedy had this to say.
The security of all Southeast Asia will be endangered if Laos loses its neutral independence. Its own safety runs with the safety of us all, in real neutrality, observed by all. I want to make it clear to the American people and to all the world that all we want in Laos is peace, not war. A truly neutral government, not a Cold War pawn. A settlement concluded at the conference table and not on the battlefield.
Shortly thereafter, U.S. military personnel began to arrive in Laos.
The U.S. Army Special Forces, they are among the most highly trained military personnel the world has known. Each of them has been trained in a variety of skills which in more conventional organizations would be distributed among two or more individuals. These soldiers possess the capability of going to remote, primitive regions of the world to live with the people, eat their food, or share their lack of it.
Lyndon Johnson became president in November of 1963 and had this to say.
We do not seek the destruction of any government, nor do we covet a foot of any territory. But we insist, and we will always insist, that the people of South Vietnam shall have the right of choice, the right to shape their own destiny in free elections in the South or throughout all Vietnam under international supervision. Nor will we bluster or bully or flaunt our power, but we will not surrender.
The secret war in Laos then began to really heat up, and soon hundreds of U.S. personnel were on the ground in Laos providing support. A secret war headquarters was established at Long Ching, Laos, and air support was provided by the U.S. Air Force from nearby Thailand. But the media began to ask questions, prompting these comments from President Nixon.
There are no American combat forces in Laos. We have been providing logistical support and some training for the neutralist government in order to avoid Laos falling under communist domination. As far as American manpower in Laos is concerned, there are none there at the present time on a combat basis.
The words spoken by President Nixon to the media didn't do much to blunt the criticism of the White House, and Congress turned up the heat on the administration. Meanwhile, over Laos, the bombing increased, even though it did nothing to slow the advance of the North Vietnamese.
In 1964, the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent a memo to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara indicating their desire to escalate efforts in Indochina. Their plan included intelligence flights over Cambodia and Laos, arming and advising the Republic of Vietnam's Air Force, and U.S. bombing of targets in North Vietnam.
Meanwhile, over Laos, the bombing increased, even though it did nothing to slow the advance of the NVA. The indigenous fighters fought hard, as did the Americans, but soon Washington had had enough. So the United States began to withdraw troops from South Vietnam, and support for the U.S.-backed Lao fighters began to diminish. But in the end, no matter how much money, materiel, and military support was thrown at the problem by the United States, it didn't matter, because the North Vietnamese were determined and would not stop until they had won the war. And their dream was realized on April 30, 1975, when Saigon fell. And close by, in the little kingdom of Laos, victory for the Pathet Lao soon followed.